Greetings, metalheads, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today I'm back with another collection update. So I'm going to be taking you through a nice little assortment of CDs I've recently acquired, all of which fall pretty comfortably within the death metal subgenre. New and old, we've got some real gems here. And what I want to start off with is actually two albums that were released in 2024. I was late to the party picking up these albums, I will admit. Both albums, and very good albums at that I was really looking forward to checking out. But the age-old struggle of the ridiculous cost of collecting physical media these days, CDs seem to be inexcusably expensive at the minute. Not all albums. Some releases when they're out, $10.99, $11.99 maybe, can just about justify that. But some albums, for some reason, seem to be about £15+ when they're released, and not decreasing to a reasonable cost for quite some time. But these two albums that I want to just talk about again initially, these two albums I did finally pick up in the Black Friday sales on Amazon. They were, I think this was still about £12, but I've been really excited to hear the new Nile album. So Nile, I think they're from South Carolina, USA, an excellent death metal band, technical, thematically, all about ancient Egypt and the ancients, the pyramids, the pharaohs, all that good stuff, and the sort of the legacy and the lore. Brilliant band. Was really excited to hear The Underworld Awaits Us All. And I did actually talk about this and the new 200 Stab Wounds album I just showed off there at the end. They were kind of the honourable mentions for my top 15, or the No Nonsense Metal Reviews top 15 albums of 2024, which if you have checked that out, then thank you for doing so. And if you haven't already, get involved with the discussion. What are your favourite albums? What do you think of my choices? But these were honourable mentions. If I had been able to purchase them sooner, earlier in the year, if they were more of a reasonable price, these two albums would definitely have featured, I think it's fair to say. And after finally getting to check out The Underworld Awaits Us All, I think this is easily one of my favourite Nile albums. There's not a bad album in their discography. They have not produced a bad album by any means, but I think this is a really strong album. It still sounds like Nile, basically just doing technical death metal with their own kind of identity. They've got a distinct sound, and no discredit to the previous albums. The last one I thought was a particularly good album. I think I'd kind of been dipping in and out, which probably hasn't helped that, but couldn't quite get into What Should Not Be Unearthed quite as much. I don't really know why. It's a good album, but I think I just haven't stuck with it enough. It's one that I do need to go back and check out. And they've got a few other albums that I'm not as familiar with Nile, but I will say this is such a beast of an album. And I wanted to just talk about it again, to just say, frickin' check this out. It kicks off with an absolute beast in Stellar of Vultures, if that's how it's pronounced, not quite sure. It's a 6-minute long neck workout. This is a head-banging track. This is a freaking great track. The whole band is absolutely faultless, absolutely incredible. And do just want to point out, we haven't got a lineup shot here, which is a shame, but we have got the lineup. Of course, the legendary Carl Sanders. That guy is great. He's a great frontman, great vocalist, great guitarist, excellent stuff. But hats off to George Colias, if that's pronounced correctly, on drums. Wow, that guy's drumming is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I cannot help but go into a frantic kind of air drumming, head banging state when I'm listening to this album. It is so good. And the whole band, as I say, really tight. Kicks off with such a great track. That's one of truly strong moments there. Then we have the absolutely phenomenally titled, get this, chapter for not being hung upside down on a stake in the underworld and made to eat feces by the four apes. It just rolls off the tongue. And it is an incredible track. Really heavy stuff. But then we've got the savage but short and sweet To Strike with Secret Fang. And then just through on out the album, it's brilliant. We get a couple of sort of longer epic tracks. True Gods of the Desert, which is stunning. And then The Underworld Awaits Us All. Absolutely savage stuff. And we do close with a very, very good, very impressive instrumental piece, Lament for the Destruction of Time. Cracking album cover as well. An album, if you haven't checked that out, but you like things technical and heavy, you need to check out Underworld Awaits Us All. It is superb. Sticking with heavy, but nowhere near as technical and complicated, new 200 Stab Wounds. So this has been featuring in a lot of top albums of the year lists, and with good reason. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think this was the #1 album of the year according to the Fistful of Metal magazine, and I can understand that. I can appreciate where they'd be coming from. Manual Manic Procedures by 200 Stab Wounds is their second album. Been around for a few years. I think they're from Cleveland, Ohio. Fairly new band on the block here, but they're a great band. Essentially what they're doing is, it's old school-ish death metal, but it is very heavy. It's very groovy. It's kind of got that caveman sledgehammer angle going on there. Very heavy. But as I say, incredibly groovy, palatable. It's not overly technical, complicated, fast, or anything like that. But actually, I would say this is really unique. You know, there's no shortage of death metal bands around. But what they're doing here, I freaking like it. In fact, I won't pick out individual tracks because it's not an overly long album. It's around the 30-minute, half an hour mark. But the whole time, it keeps you focused, it keeps you gripped. And I think the first time I heard the first album, Slave to the Scalpel, very similar. You know, there's a lot of continuity in their kind of sound and style. It's that kind of death metal. I remember first hearing that album, I was just totally blown away by how heavy it is. It's proper brutal stuff without being brutal death metal. It's not quite that extreme. Essentially, it's packed full of grooves. You can easily headbang along to it. It's a bit kind of sludgy and murky. Really good stuff. I will mention a couple of highlights though. I think Gross Abuse is a pretty short and savage track. Then we've got Manual Manic Procedures, Defiled Gestation, Ride the Flatline. It's freaking good. I'd say just give it a spin. If you like savage, groovy death metal, hell yeah, you need to check out 200 Stab Wounds. Manual Manic Procedures. Up next, a band that did feature in my top 15 albums. We've got Skeletal Remains. This being the second album from 2015. This is Condemned to Misery. I think they're from California. US death metal band. Excellent band though, I must admit. Skeletal Remains are an incredible band. I have actually been following them since the beginning, since the early days, since the first album, however many moons ago that was. In fact, that was one of the first albums that I wrote a review of on the No Nonsense Metal Reviews blog. It's going way back, that's my evidence there. But this album, weirdly enough, I hadn't got a copy of. Again, classic case, way too expensive for way too long. Hadn't got around to picking up a copy. Finally stumbled upon a new and sealed one on eBay. I think it's a US import, in fact. Century Media Records, reissued in 2021. And this nice digi contains some live tracks from Live in Tokyo 2016. I think that might have been an EP. While I'm mentioning those live tracks, they are really good, really very good versions. They're all brilliant tracks. Combination of tracks from the album and from the debut as well. Good stuff, good live recording there. But the album itself is actually really, really good. It's a step up from the first album, which annoyingly the title of which escapes me at this time. Shame on me. But it's a step up. But I think after this album, they really, really, really took off. I mean, that new album, Fragment of the Ageless, wow, that is so good. And Devouring Mortality, I think so. Great. They've got some really good albums, and I would say if you're not familiar with Skeletal Remains, then you definitely need to check them out, especially if you're a fan of Cannibal Corpse and Suffocation, bands like that. It's heavy, but it's not wildly technical, fair to say. Really good stuff though. What does kind of make me chuckle a little bit, and I can't get over the similarity there, but in vocalist Chris Monroy, we have an uncanny resemblance vocally to the legendary Martin Van Drunen of Asphyx. Such a unique and iconic voice that guy has. But Chris, as we can see here, Chris on the right there, on my left, right of the lineup. Can't tell my left and right today. Very interesting similarity vocally with Martin Van Drunen. I can't quite not hear Martin in his vocals, but a good lineup, good musicians. Yeah, we've got Adrius on bass, and we've got Adrian on guitar alongside Chris. You know what? Good musicians, can't fault them at all. It might be death metal, you know, nothing wildly technical or progressive. Good old school rooted death metal, but it's freaking good. And they do a really great job here. The album sounds great. Again, I won't pick out too many tracks that I think are standouts, but I particularly enjoy Viral Hemorrhagic Pyrexia. Just rolls off the tongue. Would happen to be the slightly more tongue twister one. Atrocious Calamity, great. There's a rather excellent kind of extended piece there in the form of Still Suffering into Sleepless Cadavers. Freaking good stuff. Really, really good. Glad I finally managed to get a copy of that. Good album cover as well. Brutal stuff. Californian death metal. Done well. So now we'll travel across the states to one of the only albums of theirs that I hadn't yet managed to get a copy of. This has been hard to frickin' find, but randomly has become widely accessible and available here in the UK after however long. This is the self-titled Suffocation album from 2006. This album is really freaking good, I must say. I was frustrated by the fact that I couldn't get hold of a copy of this in this country for ages. Absolutely ages, it seemed. A few times I even toyed with getting an expensive US import of the vinyl. Glad I didn't, because I picked this up on eBay for £8. Interesting cover, the kind of sparsity going on there. But this is solid Suffocation. No, it's not Effigy. No, it's not Pierced. But it's really, really freaking good. You know, the whole band is on good form here. I really like Frank Mullen's vocals. I think he had a great death metal vocal. That kind of guttural. He had such aggression in his vocals, and he's such a commanding presence. I mean, just look at this shot on the little insert here. Guy's got a pump action shotgun. You know, what more do you need? That's commanding. Obviously, we've got the legendary lineup here. Terence Hobbs alongside Mike. We've got Derek, phenomenal bassist, and Guy as well. I'm not overly familiar with this album because I've only listened to it a few times now, maybe four or five times. But even just from the first listen, I was pretty gripped. This is good old Suffocation. Heavy frickin' stuff. There's no shortage of absolute brain imploding death metal here. It's savage. Absolutely, it's savage. Plenty of technicality into the mix there, plenty of brutality. We've got Oblivion, kicking things off, leading pretty seamlessly into Abomination Reborn. Bind, Torture, Kill is an excellent one of the most kind of memorable, I should say. Translucent Patterns of Delirium is killer. Creed of the Infidel is great as well. The End of Ends is brilliant. And then they close out with Prelude to Repulsion. Cracking stuff. Really solid, reliable Suffocation. They're just one of the most reliable death metal bands ever, in my opinion. And they absolutely freaking crush it. Love it. Finally got hold of that copy, and I'm glad that I did. So we've got the self-titled Suffocation from 2006. So we're coming away from the States for a bit now. Actually, this is a homegrown band. This is a band that I've known about them for a few years. Heard a few different things online, on YouTube, maybe Spotify, but never really put the work in to delve into their stuff. Glad I finally did, because Cryptworm, as I say, from here in the UK, are a excellent band. Really sludgy, filthy, murky, visceral death metal. This is proper sludge stuff. The album is actually entitled Spewing Mephitic Putridity. I don't know if you can see it there on the disc. Interesting stuff. Disgusting bit of artwork, of course. It's just a two-piece as well. So we've just got the two members here. We've got Tebohani, not sure, on vocals, guitars and bass. And then we've got Joe Knight on the drums. That's our lineup. As I say, really murky, sludgy death metal. It's got a serious groove to it though. So it's proper sludgy, disgusting stuff. It's the kind of death metal where you need a shower after listening to it. But there are similarities with other modern old school style death metal bands. A little bit of similarity maybe push with Celestial Sanctuary, Undeath, 200 Stab Wounds. Maybe they've got that going on. Certainly in the absolutely incredible amount of groove in these tracks. But yeah, this is the first album, I believe. The first full length released on Pulverized Records. I have got another album out, which more on that in the next update, I'm sure. But this is really good. This is really good. It's only about 30 plus minutes long, 33, 4 minutes long, something like that. Not an overly big commitment, but it's seriously groovy. And what's really distinctive, other than those really groovy, murky, sludgy riffs, is the unbelievably kind of guttural, gargling vocals that we have there. It's interesting stuff. Short and sweet. The flow is pretty seamless, and it's putrid. So we've got Cryptworm with, I keep mispronouncing it as well, Spewing Mephitic Putridity. Check that out if you want something disgusting. And sticking with things that are disgusting, certainly in sounds of the murky, sludgy riffs, but plenty of groove, we're going with Japan's Coffins, and this is Sinister Oath. Just take a moment to appreciate that artwork. That artwork is freaking brilliant. So Coffins are a band that I have known of for many years. I think it was around the time that the Fleshlands came out. That album, so a while back. Took me a while to get hold of this. Again, this is a classic example of it was way too expensive when it came out. Didn't get it until Black Friday sales, and then didn't actually get round to giving it much of an opportunity until the last week or so. But this is a great album. Japan's Coffins are such a reliable band. Really groovy but sludgy old school death metal, I'd say. There's a little bit, and you do read it quite often with them, there's a little bit of a kind of Hellhammer, early Celtic Frost vibe in the kind of speed element to it, maybe. Don't really know. There is that kind of Hellhammer vibe there, but it's solidly death metal. Very groovy, up tempo. You can move to it. Simplistic, not overly technical or complicated, but really, really good stuff. We've got the brilliant Spontaneous Rot. We've got Sinister Oath, the title track is brilliant. Everlasting Spiral is fantastic. We've got the epic Headless Monarchy. We have, I believe that's on this track. Yep, we've got Cam Lee of Massacre fame on Things Infestation. Don't know if you can see that in our little booklet there. A great album. If you want something sludgy and filthy, but you like your death metal, definitely going to want to check out Sinister Oath by Coffins. Just ashamed that I didn't get to check that out sooner, because again, it's a fantastic death metal album. Another brilliant release this year. Moving on then, we're going live now, but we're sticking with modern death metal. And this band has been causing a lot of waves, actually, in the last few years, last few releases. This is Undeath, and this is their live album, Live from the Grave. Recorded on one of the shows from the tour. Can't actually remember, it does say where it was recorded. So recorded at Pops in Sauget, or Saget, not sure, apologies, Illinois, on the 27th of May 2022. So this was on the tour of the It's Time to Rise from the Grave album, their second album. Of course, they have also had an album, a full length, out in 2024 entitled More Insane. And I've checked out some tracks online. It is a really good album, but it is criminally expensive. It's £15, $14.99 for a physical CD. The vinyl is nearly $30. I really want to get it, but £15 is quite a lot for a CD. You know, you have to think about, can I hold on for a little bit longer, and hopefully it will go down in price. Which is exactly what happened with this one. So this live album, stumbled upon it on Amazon. It was about £7, I think. And I thought, you know what? I really like Undeath. I was really impressed with the second album there. The debut, Lesions of a Different Kind, is also a good album as well. Can't fault that. But I really enjoyed It's Time to Rise from the Grave. That was one of my favourite albums of that year. Absolutely excellent stuff, which is why I'm so keen to hear the new album. But this live album is actually really good. And it seems like a bit of an odd thing to do for a death metal band, first of all, to have a live album after 2 studio albums. See, that's unconventional, but actually it's really good. And it's great revisiting those tracks. It's primarily just drawn from the second album. We have got inclusions of Lesions of a Different Kind on there. But you know what? It was great, as I say, to revisit some of these tracks. Haven't heard that album, It's Time, for, I don't know, probably getting on for a year or so. No, maybe slightly less than that, but it's been a while. And actually, going back and checking out tracks like the brilliant Enhancing the Dead, Necrobionics, and Human Chandelier. Absolutely incredible. What these guys are doing is excellent. They are right up there, in my opinion, with bands like Celestial Sanctuary. You know, I talk about them a lot, but with good reason, because they are excellent. But also alongside bands like 200 Stab Wounds. Freaking great. You know, it's old school death metal, but what they're doing with it is really refreshing. It's really revitalizing stuff. And the sound quality is really good. The band sounds really good. They've got a hilarious album cover here as well. Kind of reminds me of some of the sort of more cartoon-esque obituary music videos. Kind of get that vibe. But they're a good band. Undeath are a really, really good band. I'd say it's a good live album. Short and sweet, about half an hour. Decent stuff. Very well performed, excellent death metal. Sticking with live then, but a legacy band, we are going with none other than these guys. We're going with Morbid Angel. And this, okay, I'm not really sure. I'm confused on the pronunciation, but should we just say Juvenilia? Juvenilia? Juvenilia. That sounds right. Could be totally wrong. But this is a retrospective live album. So if you can't tell from the Altars of Madness-esque artwork we have there, this is a live album. I think it does say, in fact, remind myself where. So up the top here, top corner, we've got recorded live at Nottingham Rock City. So here in the UK, November 14th, 1989. So if you know your Morbid Angel, you know your lineage of the band, you know that that's quite a significant year for death metal. Early days. This is essentially just Altars of Madness live, and it's not the best live album, considering the fact this is 1989, recorded in Rock City, you know, pretty underground death metal event. It sounds good, all things considered. And actually, I'm a massive fan of Altars of Madness. It's one of my favourite old school death metal albums. Freaking love that album. I have ever since I first discovered it, and it's just quite nice and just enjoyable to hear these raw, energetic live versions of those tracks. Those classics such as Immortal Rites, Suffocation, Visions from the Dark Side, of course, Chapel of Ghouls, Maze of Torment, Bleed for the Devil, Blasphemy, Lord of all Fevers and Plagues, Damnation, and Evil Spells. Sound familiar? Basically the whole freaking album, with the inclusion of some very brief solos as well. It sounds good, all things considered. Age and, I don't know, maybe the recording equipment available. So this is a nice digipack that I picked up from the Earache Records, I think it's Xmas or Black Friday sale, can't remember, alongside a few other choice articles, including this rather nice sweatshirt and the next item that I'm going to talk about. But I'd say if you're a fan of Morbid Angel, particularly the Vincent era, particularly Altars of Madness, and you like live albums, you're probably going to enjoy this, because I've enjoyed checking it out and just revisiting those classic tracks. Not anything mind-blowing in terms of the live quality of the recording, but just an enjoyable old school underground death metal gem. Sticking with old school underground death metal, maybe not underground so much, but this band is one of my favourites, and they hold a very dear spot in my heart. They're also a band that I've talked about on this channel numerous times. We are talking about Merseyside's finest, Carcass. This is Choice Cuts. So this is a compilation album released in 2004. Compilation, it's a best of, essentially, for the first part of the album. Do you really need it if you've got all the albums, which I do? Probably not. But the reason I picked this up was because I hadn't got a copy. It was very inexpensive in the sale. I will say, actually, credit to Earache Records. They've done a Christmas sale, Xmas sale, whatever. They've actually done it as a proper sale. A lot of sales these days that you see, they're not sales at all. They're just like a couple of pennies off, or jacking up the price and then beforehand and then dropping it back down to what it was. That's not a sale. They've done it right. Plenty of stuff, really good prices. Vinyl, you know, really solid, nice colour and full dynamic range vinyl for like 15 quid. And we're talking about classic like Napalm Death and Carcass releases and stuff. But the reason that I picked this up is because I hadn't got a copy, and also I was intrigued to see that it has the Peel sessions, bonus tracks of the Peel sessions from the 2nd of January 89 and the 16th of December 90. So we've got 2 John Peel radio broadcast sessions there. It's raw, it's chaotic, but it's good. It's energetic. It's freaking energetic. And these are early these early recordings, you know, Symphonies of Sickness material predominantly there. Brilliant stuff though. I absolutely love that Symphonies of Sickness album, so I'm right at home there. And actually, the kind of best of is select tracks from each album chronologically. We've also got Tools of the Trade thrown in there for good measure. It's quite enjoyable to just revisit those top picks. You know, when you're sitting there, it's late at night on a Saturday, you've had way too many beers, you kind of just need something energetic and familiar. This is a good one to reach for, actually. I'm not massively keen on the reek of putrefaction material, but we get the brilliant intro that is Genital Grinder. We've got Maggot Colony. We've got the essential Exhume to Consume. Swarming vulgar mass of infected virulency. Tools of the Trade. Corporal Jigsaw Quandary, of course. Incarnated Solvent Abuse. And the list goes on. Actually, it's a really good compilation. I would recommend, if you weren't already a Carcass fan, maybe you haven't got around to them yet, I'd say if you can pick up a cheap copy of this, you've got a beginner's guide to Carcass, which is worth the purchase. And to be honest, if it doesn't get you hooked, then nothing will. So that's Choice Cuts, the final article in this little treasure trove. So there we have it, my latest collection updates. Just to refresh, we had Nile with Underworld Awaits Us All. We've got 200 stab wounds with Manual Manic Procedures. Always say it the wrong way round. Then we've got Skeletal Remains with Condemned to Misery. Self-titled Suffocation. Then we've got the tongue-twisting Spewing Mephitic Putridity from Cryptworm. Coffin's Sinister Oath. It's time. Live from the Grave, I should say. Undeath. Of course, we've got Morbid Angels with Juvenilia. And of course, we have Carcass with Choice Cuts. All worth checking out. I'd recommend checking out any of these albums, any of these releases. They're all worth it, and you can pick them up. I picked these up easily enough. It's just whether or not you're willing to pay the price. So, my friends, what are your thoughts and opinions on these bands, on these albums? Always interested to hear thoughts and opinions of others, as always. Have you got them in your collection? Have you not? Why not? Check them out if you haven't heard it. But thank you very much for watching, my friends. Do feel free to like, subscribe, share. The support is very much appreciated. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy things. Until next time, take care of yourselves and stay heavy.